Are we rolling?
Yeah, we're rolling.
We're rolling.
Yeah.
How does it feel to have the podcast happen after the plunge? This is a first for you, right? Normally it's podcast, sauna, plunge.
And then maybe even back in the sauna.
And then back in the sauna. This is sauna, plunge, podcast.
As per your requests.
That's right. Yeah.
Because, as we were discussing in the sauna, when I first met you, you were in a rush and it was the morning.
As always.
At Cold Camp. Yeah. And we were warming up and you were ready to go. And you're like, I'm like, are you going to go back in the sauna? You're like, no, I'd like to finish on cold.
That's
like,
right.
Wow. That's new. So here we are. Episode maybe 7 or 8. I'm not too sure. Gut Gang podcast with awesome guest, co-founder of Unbounded or Stay Unbounded. I always say both. Unbounded, Stay Unbounded.
It's unbounded.
Right.
The tagline is Stay Unbounded. Quick aside is that we, when coming up with the company name, Unbounded wasn't available. And so our Instagram and our website say Stay Unbounded, but the company name is Unbounded. We're still trying to get that URL.
Someone's just holding it hostage.
Yeah, it's a one of those companies that holds domains and they can't get a hold of the owner. That they think the owner might have passed away, and just we'll try and get it at some point. But
so here we are, shivering our.
Yeah. So how does it feel to be post plunge?
It's
getting
good.
into a podcast.
I'm obviously used to it, but at
Sure.
the same time, I was thinking in terms of doing the podcast, like it's nice to maybe do cold plunge first, then sauna, get the guests all warm and comfortable, and then that would allow them to be more comfortable for the podcast. And then
Right.
you even said that Huberman says the sauna is, what does he say?
The truth barrel. Yeah, he dropped that the other day. I love it. I think it's very appropriate. I think that you have a hard time putting the effort into the filters and maybe the things that you don't want to say when you're in the sauna, that you're just in such a state of discomfort that you just say exactly as things are or how they are or the truth. And it allows for a lot less filter and then obviously a lot more connection and a lot more authentic conversations.
Right.
But yeah, when you asked me like what order did I want to do this today, I thought, well, the sauna is great for having a conversation in the sauna. But when you get out of a cold plunge, like you are on high alert, you are obviously a little bit more plugged into your nervous system. And so I think that, you're able to actually just like speak more alertly and you're more focused. Obviously, like I'm very aware of my toes right now, and the odd shiver comes through and then you can hear it in your voice. But, I like the feeling of being a little bit more alert and having that tiny edge of not sitting back in a chair, but being more present in my body.
Yeah. Well, so then for the listenership and the viewership, just so you know, we just got out of cold plunge.
Literally.
So for the podcast listeners, without any visual context, and they think they sound kind of different or their voices are a little chattered.
Mm-hmm.
We just got out of a cold plunge. And I wanted to honor you because that's what you like to do.
That.
And I definitely feel a little bit more focused and engaged in this position. I've been in this position many times with other guests, but it's the first time that I've done it in order of, right? Sauna, plunge, now podcast.
Mm-hmm.
So I think...
And don't forget, we had that coffee before that too, right? So now the effects of that coffee are, I don't know what the multiple is, but they're heightened.
And
right?
then also the peppermint.
And of course our new, trademarked.
Yeah. You've seen it here first. You saw it here first. Timestamp.
Yeah. Sensory deprivation, peppermint mountaintop, cold plunges.
Totally. That's the best.
Yeah.
So, and that's why we're here today. I'm so excited to have you as a guest. And we've
grateful to be here. Thank you.
We've had some great conversations in the sauna, but I don't know you that well.
Mm-hmm.
We don't know each other that well at all. So this is a great opportunity to just have a conversation, get to know one another. The prerequisites in my podcast, and I've explained this to pretty much every guest, either A, they have to have graduated my gut rehabilitation course. because I want to interview some graduates because
Mm-hmm.
they've got amazing success stories, or because I also want to interview people that I don't know, that I've never worked with.
Mhm.
So we don't know, you've never worked with me, but in order for you to do the podcast, you have to be able to do a cold plunge, a sauna, and you have to be an excellent human being.
Okay.
So you've met those 3 requirements.
Oh, thank you. I'm glad.
Yeah.
Yeah. Now knowing the tests that I or the accreditations I needed in order to be here. So.
Well, because let's be serious, there's a lot of people that want to be on podcasts, and with my vision with this podcast is to share education. I want there to be some seriously valuable lessons the viewership and the listenership can get from it, not just watching 2 people just having a conversation.
Sure.
Because there's a lot of that out there already. Yeah. So I want there to be a lot of good teaching points. And sorry, if you can't do a cold plunge, then you're just not welcome. Straight up.
Very, very exclusive. Well, I think that nowadays you're going to find more and more people that are able to. I think it's, where it was a couple of years ago is a far cry from where it is today, with it being very commonplace. You have, I would say it's a household known now that cold exposure is good for you, and people are doing it. The amount of people that we get walking by when we're doing something, be it in the lake or an event with cold tubs a couple of years ago, it was like, are you insane? What are you people doing? Yeah. You're going to get hypothermia. You're going to die. Are you crazy? And nowadays it's like, oh yeah, cool. My friend does that too. And it's like, or like, I'm going to do it for the first time tomorrow or something. Right. So it's, I think the approach has changed quite a lot now. So you might actually, these limitations you've set, you might find more people available than you might think.
Good. Bring it on.
Yeah.
So that being said, I know a little bit of the relationship that you have with Ron. Ron was one of my second guests here on the podcast. But why don't you walk us through your history and how you were doing these cold plunges? Because really, you were the one that introduced Ron to the cold experience.
I sure was. Yeah, I got his cherry.
Yeah, so let's hear about that. Kind of like, where you came from and what's your backstory.
Sure. Yeah, it's what Ron is actually. It's like he's my not my muse, but he's like the constant through it all. This. So Ron and I actually go like really far back. To start back at the beginning, many moons ago, I came to Toronto. I grew up in Ottawa. I was born in Toronto. My parents, when I was really young, 4 or 5, moved to Ottawa. Went to school in Ottawa, and then I came back to Toronto for university. And then during university, I got a job at Good Life Fitness, right? As all young guys with body dysmorphia and looking to get into physical shape, and I'm going to change how women look at me and my self-esteem and all my validation and all that stuff. So anyway, I got a job at Good Life.
Why you joined? Or no, that's why you got employment there?
So yes. And I started as a customer service rep. At the front, right? The CSRs, right? Here's your towel. You're coming in for a tanning session. Great. And very quickly I was like, oh, well, if I'm a trainer, that's, a little bit more esteemed. I'll be, all the things that come along with being a trainer. I think in the early days at Good Life Fitness, where I felt like I would work on my body, which, growing up, and we can start peeling back these layers here. Growing up, I had intense body dysmorphia. I was extremely bullied. I was very self-conscious about my appearance. I was like classic kid that would have to run home from school because there were bullies chasing him, and like jump through backyards and hide and pretend to be sick so I wouldn't go to school and get teased. And it was traumatic for sure. From grade 5 or 6 till I would say like grade 9 or 10, it was brutal bullying. And then it was always just trying to fit in and work around those massive insecurities.
If you mind me asking, what were you being bullied for? What were the body images that people were
being out of shape at that time? Like my areas what we would now call estrogen sites, like my chest would hold weight, or my triceps would hold weight, or like my hips would hold weight in ways where your body's still like figuring it out, right? Like you haven't hit puberty, you haven't gone through all the growth spurts. I was like tiny, and then all of a sudden I was 6'2". But it was just all the typical things that kids are mean about, and I didn't have the tools for how to deal with that. And you know, it was just one of those things that I also just kind of like pushed down, never really dealt with properly because I was a kid and I didn't have the ability to do that. So fast forward, I'm now a trainer at Good Life Fitness, right? I would say I'm not in shape, but I'm in better shape. I'm like the frame of someone who would be in shape, but I'm not in shape. And I started to work out, obviously. I wanted to, you know, what's the fastest way for me to feel better about myself, to change the thing that makes me uncomfortable, makes me feel insecure, and where all of my validation and insecurity was in my body. And so obviously as I changed my body, I started to get attention. I feel like, you know, I was very much picked on, and you know, I would always want the attention of a female, and then I would never get it. I'd be made fun of. And so all of a sudden when I did get this attention, it was just like, oh my God, what is this power I have? And I have no idea how to use it. And I'm going to I just made all the wrong choices because I just never learned for how to deal with that type of attention. And so, you know, that's a whole other tangent about how like I came to actually self-love and to appreciate myself. And, but it started with a really, I would say validation seeking and, trying the wrong way for how to feel good about myself by just changing this physical appearance, which was my early career as a personal trainer at Good Life Fitness, which is where I met Ron. Okay. So this is like 2005. And in those days, Ron was actually a client of another friend who was a personal trainer, and Ron was a nightlife promoter at the time. So Ron and I also got to know each other more as like the nightlife scene, and I would know him by he'd throw a party and I'd go to his party, hang out with him there. And it was just this perfect relationship of, you know, I was starting to become a little bit more confident in myself and wanting to go out and wanting to engage and wanting to be social. And Ron was a vehicle for that. And we had a friendship around it, but it was very much around sort of this, I wouldn't call it unhealthy, but not a healthy lifestyle.
So you're
at night.
Getting more in shape. You're getting more confident. You find Ron because he's doing events.
Yeah.
And then how convenient, you know, the club promoter and like, you know, the guy. Ron.
Sure.
And so.
Yeah, I'm with Ron. That's his tagline.
He said that too.
Yeah.
The same thing. He's like, I'm with Ron. That's the podcast. That's the hashtag.
Yeah. So, you know, years go by and we both do various things with our lives. You know, he's got his whole world of being a digital creator and a graphic designer and in branding. I then started my own personal training company after Good Life. And through that, I then started a meal delivery company that became one of the largest meal delivery companies in Canada at the time. Partnered with Uber Eats, was providing food for, you know, the Toronto sports teams. And was, you know, it was a really incredible period of time. It was almost a decade, about 9 years I ran this meal delivery business. This was well before the time of HelloFresh and all those things.
You went from personal trainer and you decided to create a food prep company. How did that spawn?
Yeah. Well, you know, it's not a big leap when I look back at it. At the time, it was kind of like personal training, and then you were in the food industry. But what happened is when I started my own personal training company, I took all my clients from Good Life, as every trainer does, right? It's like learn the tools, and I'm going to start my own business. Why am I going to give you 65% of
course
of it? Good Life is great, by the way, but you know, I felt like I could provide greater value and take care of people better. And so I started my own business, and I did that at this little training studio at Yonge and Bloor in Toronto called Florida Jacks. It was a moment in time and an anomaly because that place was certainly not your typical personal training studio. You had people from all walks of life training there, all types of trainers and all types of clients. And one of the consistent themes was it was a juggernaut in terms of putting out people to do fitness shows. And this was right when, bodybuilding and fitness modeling and all that was getting, that huge uptick. And of course, again, I was ripe for the picking. I was like, wow, fitness shows. Wow, look at all these people with their abs. And I want to do that. I want to have that type of attention. And so I got into fitness shows when I was training there. And
keep on talking. I'm going to pull up a picture here.
Oh, okay. Great. I think I know the photo you're going to pull up. And this is actually later in life, but it plays to the same theme. So yeah, this was
Buddy's on the cover of a friggin' fitness magazine.
Yeah, that's
on my vision board. It's me on the cover of Men's Health.
Amazing.
I would, it's a dream of mine. And look at you.
This was a dream of mine. The irony of this, and we can talk about this later, is I actually didn't end up on the cover of this this is the largest health magazine, fitness magazine in Canada. Right. I didn't end up on this cover until years later, after I'd left the fitness scene, which of course has its own interesting story to it. How it's like you kind of have to not be seeking it.
Is this you?
Yeah.
Yeah, I was gonna say, like, you're on the cover of the magazine.
It is, yeah, but this wasn't during that period of time where I was doing the fitness shows and seeking this. Right. This happened when I wasn't seeking it. So I was doing these fitness shows, and all about this. Yeah. I was trying to eat healthy and looking for ways to make sure that I could dial down my body fat and follow these intense meal plans in order to step on stage and be shredded and all those things. I was going to Whole Foods, every week, probably twice a week, dropping a boatload of cash, and then spending 5 to 6 hours twice a week, Monday or Sundays and Wednesdays, prepping all these meals for myself, because you're eating like 6 meals a day. And I was like, this is it's very expensive. It's a huge draw on my time, and I'm not making this very tasty. I feel like there's a better way to do it. And at the time I had a friend who, he was working for a well-known chef in Toronto. And I was like, listen, man, if I gave you a list of ingredients, tilapia, ground beef, sirloin, sure, salmon, chicken breast. Yeah. Okay. And I gave you then these oils or these things that you're able to use and these spices you're able to use. Could you create like a healthy but really tasty meal plan through all of this based on all these macros and stuff?
And for a chef,
for a chef, he was like, don't insult me. Right. Of course I can. Right. I was like, cool. Could you do this for me? And he was like, yeah, all right. And within the first week, I was like, well, if I can have this, surely other people will want this. Mm-hmm. And at that time, there was like Meals on Wheels, there was Rose Rice Mint, there was Weight Watchers, but there wasn't anyone really looking at doing like that protein, carb, and veg that you now see across the board in all these meal kits. Right. And at that time, I was able to get 5 clients. I was like, listen, would you be, if, I can control, if I'm lucky, 3 hours of that person's week, right? 3 gym sessions, an hour long. Yep. And then they have 21 opportunities to fuck that up by what they choose to eat. 3 meals a day for 7 days. They're likely going to make some poor decisions. And doesn't matter how many times I get to train them. If they're making poor eating decisions, it's going to be a non-starter.
Hold on. So for anyone that's got a personal trainer and you're putting in the time and you're working with that trainer and maybe you're frustrated with the results that you may not be getting, we need to do an assessment, look at where else there's room for improvement. And you just said it. How many times is there possible fuck ups or slip ups throughout the days of the week? It's always food. Yeah. Food.
Yeah. To me, it was just simple math. It was like, if I'm going to be successful, then I have to control the opportunities where I'm not around for them to not be successful. And so the more opportunities I can take from them, yep, to create success, the better chance I am of getting them to where they're going. And so I was able to get 5 of my clients to pay up front for a month of these meals. I was like, listen, this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to eat these meals. These are wonderful. They're tasty. I even gave samples out and people were like, oh, this is great. Yeah, I would do this. And so that was the capital I used to start that business, was the down payment of a month from 5 different clients. And then, of course, I was like, well, I want to make sure that they're going to eat this post-workout in the gym where everyone else is watching. And then so within a month, it was like 10 trainers were getting meals from me, and then all of their clients were getting meals from me, and it just snowballed. So within a couple months, I was hundreds of meals were going out every week.
And how did this surprise your chef when you were originally just asking, could you just do me a favor and do this for me?
Yeah, he very quickly and like kindly backed out.
Oh,
he's just
okay.
like,
what are you doing?
What are you doing, man?
Sure.
This is because I was like, this is going to be a business. Yeah. There's clearly something here that we're onto and that people need, and we all know it, right? Like it's a huge multi-billion-dollar industry. Yeah. But at the time, it was the idea of a meal prep company wasn't really there. Again, this was like 2010. Just Weight Watchers, just Rose Reisman, and I think there might have been another one called like Meals on Wheels or something like that. But he backed out, and I was forced to like hire a chef, which I looking back was amazing because it was this gritty 55-year-old guy, amazing guy. His name's Tim Nybor, and he had come through. He actually lived in the Cayman Islands as well. Yeah, and he was like a gritty old salt, and he was just like, listen, kid, because I was like 24 at the time, 25. And he's like, if you're going to be my boss, like you're going to be telling me what to do, then when you're in the kitchen, you're in my kitchen. And it's like, yes, chef, no chef, and you're going to learn everything you need to learn. And back then it was still a startup. So I was like, okay, well, I'm going to be on the prep line and on the packing line and going delivering these things. And I was every part of the job. And so for the first 3.5 years.
So you were in there.
I was in there.
You were getting your hands dirty.
I was not only a personal trainer, I was then also like early in the morning doing deliveries, then helping prep in the kitchen, and then going and trying to sell people on it, and then helping pack the meals, and then going and delivering the meals, and then coming back and doing the dishes. And it was a slog for like 4 years. But I got to learn how to cook. I got to understand how to run a business. And now, my girlfriend jokes all the time now where she's like, you're so comfortable in the kitchen. Like, it's like, yeah, I worked in a kitchen for 4 years basically. And that company, and that was another touch on Ron, if we're going to use Ron as this continual theme. Okay. When I started Fuel Foods, which was the company, we would help deliver meals to Covenant House during he likes to donate stuff around his birthday to Covenant House and do drives. So we would provide meals to people on the streets. And then we would have events, or we'd have little things, or if he was going to do a post or something like that, like we'd provide meals. And so it was initially Ron bringing me out to the nightlife, and then I was bringing things to Ron in the form of meals for food. And that was a great period of life where I started to learn about business, about health. And it gave me the opportunity to travel. It gave me the opportunity to like spend some time growing and reflecting, which I think was like a really important period for me. But yeah, that, to give you that little play-by-play, Fuel Foods was ended up becoming like a 7-figure business, super, super successful. And then helped me transition into events and running communities. And it gave me the initial slog of the working in the kitchen and doing all that sort of grind. Then on the back end of it gave me the opportunity to really spend time with people, growing communities, hosting events, creating experiences for people, which kind of uncovered this love for building these experiences, which are now what I've been doing in this last chapter of my life.
So then let's segue into that. Let's have a quick little pause, and then let's talk about kind of what you're doing right now with all the events. And you know what? Why don't we just conclude? I just want for the viewers. I'm going to move my notes here. There's a picture of you and Ron, is there not?
There might be.
Yeah. This one.
That is, yes. There he is. That is his cherry.
Is that the?
That is the first dip. That is the first plunge he ever did. That is November 6th, 2020.
November 6th, 2020.
Yeah.
And this is Ron's first plunge.
Yeah, and this is
a
whole story tied to it as well.
Let's talk about that into the after or
part 2.
Yeah, part 2.
Okay,
cool.
Brandon, Something happens inside us when we get inspired to change ourselves, change our nutrition, our fitness. But we really do need to visualize to see and feel how we want to be. And for that, we need a plan.
No, you need a plan.
I want you to
We
say,
need a plan.
We need a plan.
You said we,
need a
so
plan.
I don't know.
Brendan Coates is the author of the 30-Day Challenge to a Healthier, Happier, Stronger You. Let Brendan into your lives for just 30 days. It'll be epic, I can promise you. Because for some of you, maybe it is time to bust out of what you are. It's the 30-Day Challenge to a Healthier, Happier, Stronger You. Available direct at brendancoates.ca. And go behind the scenes with Brendan for each and every episode of the Gut Gang podcast. That's available everywhere you get your podcasts. Brendan! I think this podcast is going to be fun, pretty fun, and different than the other podcasts.
It's funny when I sent Ron, or I uploaded just a quick little soundbite from his and my podcast. Of course, he's Mr. Apple and technology,
Right, of course.
so he's listening on
AirPods.
He's like, how come it's only on the left side? I'm like, oh shit, I totally forgot to change it for the Instagram reel of 60 seconds because there's only the ones.
Right. Oh, he would too.
Of course.
Yeah. He catches all of that.
Yeah. So amazing that he was the one that said it to me. So now that I won't make that mistake ever again.
Yeah. A little thing that my partner Lisa actually just corrected me on the other day is the EMF out of the AirPods.
Oh,
It's heartbreaking for me because it's like none of the string pods stay in my ears, and so AirPods or AirBuds, which I still have left over from my Android days, don't judge me. They do fit in, but the latest studies are pretty resounding that it's like the equivalent of having the EMF from using AirPods or wireless headphones in your ears is the equivalent of having a wireless router basically attached to your head the whole time. So I know it's like you can't do it anymore without knowing. It's like smoking. It's like knowing the risk.
I've intuitively known. That's why I never partook in using them. Like,
Yeah.
I've got the corded ones. I'm happy with those. A colleague of mine, Dr. Sachin Patel, when he does...
Love Sachin.
Yeah, yes, of course. You were just mentioning him. So when he does interviews, he refuses to interview the guests if they've got iPods in.
Good.
Politely says, remove them, or we're just not going to have this interview because I can't have a conversation with you. Yeah, knowing that you're just microwaving your brain.
Yeah. And it's, good for him. That's such a good thing to hear.
He's
special.
Yeah, he is.
But it goes even to the point where like they're seeing developmental effects in babies and in children because of the child monitors and the things like that are nearby. So, this apparently is like, the next smoking, where we all at this point should know or have the ability to know the effects of these things. And we're just like, well, it's more convenient. So
no, I don't buy it. I don't buy it because what did we do for the longest time before that? Right?
Yeah, of course. We had headphones that actually plugged into our phone or into anything.
Do you remember the Discmans where
I used to have the Walkman, the Discman.
5-second advanced reads, so it's like a 5-second skip prevention or whatever, all that stuff.
Yeah.
Oh, those are the best. I'm going to put, so you had mentioned the EMF is like a second smoking. It's like,
yeah,
right. We should have known better. So I did a YouTube video. I want to post that right here, the link, because I said that the second smoking really is the fat-free and sugar-free foods. Because, and you can attest to this, right? We laugh at the advertisements from the 60s and 70s and the 80s.
It's
it's doctors, number one recommended, Camel, et cetera, right?
Eat margarine.
Yeah. Well, but we laugh at the smoking advertisements, at just how preposterous they were. Now I say in maybe 10 or 15 years, hopefully, we will be laughing at all of the fat-free, sugar-free, all the bullshit, stories and fables that those big companies have been trying to sell us. And they have been successfully.
Very successfully. Well, and that's because, I mean, this is a rabbit hole for sure, but
Let's
like
go down it.
the dairy
Let's go
industry,
down it.
it's lobbyists, right? Like there's so much power behind these companies that they have. Dairy Farmers of Canada, or of what, you know, all of these things. It's like I was humbled again the other day, and I'm sure you get this all the time, where someone's like, "Oh, I'm doing this healthy thing," and you're like, "But that's not actually what you think it is." Like I was buying grass-fed beef, and my friend's like, "Well, what's the stamp on that grass-fed beef?" I was like, "Oh, this," and I guess it says like the Dairy Farmers of Canada stamp on it. And I guess according to regulations, it only has to be 60% grass-fed in order for it to qualify as grass-fed. Or it's the butter. That's what it was. It was the butter. And then, of course, there's grass-fed beef, but it's like grain finished. Yeah. And it's like all of these loopholes where it's like, how can we just not do the thing the way we're advertising it as, so that we can save some bucks? And it's like, but what's the cost in that? It's people's health, like real health, long-term health. Because for me, if I'm buying grass-fed butter that I think is true grass-fed butter, and really it's 60%, like then that's almost like a fifth, like a margin of like half of the thing I think I'm buying is not what it actually is. And if I do this for years and years and decades over time, that's a massive cumulative issue for my health. And it's just like, but why not just charge more and like do it the way it's supposed to be done? Because not as many people will buy it, so we won't make as much money.
Right. And I'm going to say, like, big agriculture, Canadian dairy, you guys are all bullies. Just flat out bullies. I can't stand any of you. One of my friends had his farm raided because he was doing milk and eggs.
Oh, okay.
And
like I'm not familiar, like unlicensed or something.
So he was doing unpasteurized milk.
Got it.
Right. And you can.
Is this like a cow share program you can do where people do the way around it is like different people can buy into the ownership of the cow?
And you can totally do that. And that's kosher. Right.
Right.
If you don't have that buy-in program, you can sell unpasteurized milk. And it is a larger criminal offense doing that than it is to sell cocaine in Canada. And so how
right.
mind-boggling is that concept? And so what he was doing is he was selling eggs, and you can have people come to your farm and purchase eggs from you. But if those eggs leave your farm, they have to be created from another monetary system that just creates eggs, right? Another cash grab.
Sure.
And so someone told, and then he got his farm raided. And so it's just like,
oh, that's tough.
No, it's horrible.
Yeah.
Right. And think of climate change and all of these political things that's going on, carbon footprint. How about the carbon footprint on just taking those eggs out to get a stupid stamp back to the farm and then being back distributed for, distribution? Right. It doesn't make sense.
There's a lot that doesn't make sense in our industry.
You probably had to deal with some of those challenges with the food prep company. So did you have any issues with the food prep company dealing with just red tape or challenges?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, that was looking back at my past, I realized I like to sort of open new industries and find areas where I think there's an opportunity and expand on that. And it's often in areas where you have to work with regulators or work at an industry that's not used to the change. And
welcome to your current reality.
Yeah, we can get to that in a second. I guess I like struggle, clearly, but yeah, definitely with delivering food to people's doors and prepping it ahead of time. And there was a lot of work with public health, both in the production of the meals, then the preparation of them, the storing of them, and the delivering of them. It's not like a pizza that's made fresh, thrown in a bag and delivered out in that moment. It's like this food is prepped, in the morning. It's then packaged in a kitchen, and then it's then driven out. So it might spend like not a whole day, but like over the course of a day, this meal is coming together from ingredients to someone's doorstep. And so there's a lot of opportunities there for there to be an issue with bacteria or heat or temperature. things go bad, right? Like it's like 2 to 3 hours at room temperature, bacteria can grow. So there's a lot of controls that needed to happen with that. And certainly getting licensed as like, what are you? You're not a restaurant. You're not a like ingredient delivery. Like you're like a fully prepared meal being delivered, which is its own category. So there was lots of things to work through on that end. But to what you were saying with like the current business.
Well, let's just really quick. This is probably nice of you to pave the way for all of the current food prep companies that are.
I will take that. I actually mentored a lot of the current meal delivery company owners. And a lot of these formulas with like deliver on a Sunday and deliver on a Wednesday, and this is the structure of the meals, and even a lot of the meals themselves, a lot of these formats were based off of the one that we developed years and years and years ago. Like I said, when we first started, there wasn't really anyone doing meal prep company or a meal prep company. And then by the time we were about 3 or 4 years in, there were 35 in Toronto, and all very similar. We had chefs taken from our kitchen over the years that would then go and start up with other people. And I mean, it's natural. It's just like, and it's only fair, right? Like I left Good Life to start my own business. People within our own business started and left and started their own. But it was an interesting chapter that provided a lot of lessons, and I think like prepped me for the next phase.
So let's talk about that.
Sure.
Current struggles and red tape. And then I said, welcome to your current reality.
Yeah.
Because you, aside from creating this food prep company, dealing with all the challenges and the regulations, now you're dealing with a whole new spectrum, a whole new scope of the municipal and provincial government being like, who are you and what the heck are you doing?
Yeah. And isn't it ironic that with the meal prep company, with the cold exposure and the heat therapy and the breath and all those events, with nutrition and gut health and all that, these are all things that are good for people. Sure. And you're fighting an uphill battle to try and offer value to people's lives and improve people's lives. And a lot of the time, the regulators, we do have great relationships now with them, I should say, but it wasn't like that initially. And it's always like, well, we don't like change. We don't like people working outside of what we know, even though what we know consistently is proven through time to be false or outdated information. And it's hard to wake up each morning and be like, I know that what I'm doing is valuable to people and people's lives, and I'm just trying to create this offering for people that I feel as an entrepreneur, it's really important to me that there's two things. One, I believe in what I'm doing, and two, that I can stand behind what I'm selling. Like if I think I'm just pushing something for profit, I won't. It's a matter of time till I'm going to be like, I don't want to do this anymore. But then you add in the other layer of not only do I believe in what I'm doing and I believe in what I'm selling, I feel good about being paid for this thing I'm passionate about. Now I then have to turn around and fight to just offer this. And that's a whole set of stress and struggle that, there are other products and there are other businesses that are a lot less intensive in this way. And it just seems that I've picked industries and companies that don't do that. That just, I don't know. Maybe like I said, I think I like struggle. But the current business, Unbounded, very much was run and gun from the beginning. And it was very much a product of the pandemic, born out of a need for connection, for feeling capable, for finding myself again. There's various founders within Unbounded, Ron being one of them.
Let's pull up. I think you sent me that one.
Sure.
You guys, and there it is. And so I showed this with on the last podcast.
The photo that went around the world in 15 minutes.
Yeah.
So that other photo that you were showing before with the 6 guys.
Let's go to that one because that's a good segue.
That was the first one, and then this photo in the ice came after. But
so that was the first one, Ron's first one.
So this was November 6th. So the backstory of this basically was like I had always done cold plunges on like an annual basis, or like hey, it's the last weekend of of the cottage season. I'm going to jump in the lake and then sit by the fire. It's going to be a thrill. Or it's New Year's or Christmas and I'm going to cut a hole in the ice with some buddies and jump in and have a shot of scotch and we're alive, we're great. But it was like jump in, jump out. Was not jump in, sit there for 2 to 4 minutes, stay there and like think. So I'd always done that. And this was 2020, as I said. And so I had been very, very lucky in that during a lot of that pandemic and lockdown, I was up at the cottage and I had the ability to be outdoors and swimming and taking part in these things. And a lot of friends, a lot of these guys in this photo didn't have that luxury and were, contained to condos or houses, couldn't really engage in the outdoors, as we know, couldn't go work out. So there was like a real feeling of disconnect socially, disconnect physically. And when I closed up the cottage at the end of October, beginning of November, I was like, well, I'm going to come back to Toronto and keep swimming in the cold water. And at that time, I didn't know all the education and science behind it. I just knew how I was feeling and what it was doing for me. I just had the experience of it. I didn't have all of the proof behind it. This was before Huberman and all these things that now are just like, well, yeah, of course we know that it's good. So I just knew this is how I feel after I do this thing. And I'm going to keep doing this thing. And on the other side of town, Lisa, my partner, romantic partner and business partner, was doing the same thing without me knowing this. And then I was also doing it with our fourth founder, Zach Ramlin, who you might know as well. And then, of course, Ron became one of our founders as well. So there were the four of us. But this dip was, I came back to Toronto. And at this time, like, it was not a regular thing for people to go into the water in Toronto. It was still like, ew, is that water even clean? Are you going to catch something? Like, there was no culture around going down to the lake in summer or winter, especially not in winter, and jumping in. And I, reached out to a bunch of friends. I was like, hey, I'm going to make a little fire on the beach, make some coffee over the fire, and I'm going to go for a swim if anyone wants to come. Yeah, I cast a wide net, and these were the fellows that showed up, Ron being one of them. And I think they were at a place where it was kind of like, fuck it. What else am I going to do? I'm headed into another winter. We're going to be going into another lockdown. And how am I going to challenge myself? I think people were at such a perfect point to do something new, do something that challenged themselves, reconnect with people. And as we now know, like, this is an absolute rocket ship for that type of activity.
Well, and you said, and same with Ron, like, you used to go to the bar scene.
Yeah.
And so I imagine these guys all probably went out in their heyday in some capacity or another. And so you're just at this moment, you're like, hey guys, I'm going to the lake.
Yeah.
I'm going to light a fire and let's just dump in and just hang out.
Yeah.
That's all it was.
And I think that also a lot of my friends know me as Captain Experience. They know that if I'm inviting them out to something, there's going to be a certain experience waiting for them. Something that's going to feel good, something that's going to be fun, something that's going to be different. Yeah. And I think, I've said this many times. I've said this, even at our last event in front of a big crowd, that I think for Ron, for example, this was like, oh, I'm going to get a moment where I can capture this, right? Which we know he loves. And there was so much more to it. Like for him, it was like, cool, I'm going to document that I'm doing something challenging, but the reality was so much deeper, what he was getting out of it. And in fact, all of them. So these guys were all strangers. And we went out and this was cold. It was really cold that day. And everyone came back in and everyone's just like, what was that? I feel amazing. And then, two of the friends were like, hey, do you want to go grab a coffee? And like instantly hit it off and connected, which is like, who does that often, that you're just like wanting to go catch up with someone you've never met before.
We both can attest to this. When you get into that cold water, you're creating this bond, and as you said, like this experience. Yeah. And it's just because not a lot of people want to do it. Yeah. So that you automatically connect to the people that you do it with.
Yeah. Struggle builds incredibly strong bonds. And, we've talked about this before where, You don't care how you look, you don't care how you sound, you are incredibly authentic and you're very real. And that creates this environment for people to really connect because you're actually seeing the person and you're actually allowing yourself to be seen exactly as you are, which is really rewarding when someone is like, wow, I just said something or did something that I might not normally do because I'm worried about being judged, and I did it and I'm accepted. And not only that, someone's like really engaging with me. Wow, that felt good. And so you have this moment where you're like, cool, I can be me. And then I can actually hang out with this person while being me. That feels really good.
So I want you to say that again. Just repeat that for the listenership, because that's powerful about doing something, not being fearful of judgment.
Yeah. I think today it's so hard to do anything without thinking about how you look, how it's going to appear on camera. If someone's going to think a certain thing about you, if you yourself are going to judge you doing that, there's all of these different lenses and voices and things that we have around what we do, what we say, how we live. And in very cold water or in a hot sauna, or in any of these areas where you disassociate from that kind of like always chattering voice that's typically pretty negative about ourselves. You have a moment where you're a blank slate and you're actually operating with no filter and you're operating as you, authentically you. And then what is amazing is when you're able to operate like that and be yourself and then be accepted and see yourself accepted in that way, it's incredibly rewarding. And then you want more of that. You want to be in environments where you can feel yourself and be yourself and be accepted as that self.
And so let's talk about that, because for a brief moment, if you're in a sauna or a cold plunge, yes, you get to be your authentic self. And I think people are starving to be their authentic selves. And people are starving to be and to feel acceptance. So if you're telling me for a moment, if you're with a tiny little group of some friends, or if you do a big event like, we're going to talk about that, the Unbounded, Sunrise Socials and so forth. But for that moment, that brief split second, they get to be a kid, be authentic, be no judgment, because everyone is in that same moment and they get to feel amazing. And then you just said, like, start to surround yourself with those experiences. And then it turns into a lifestyle.
And then what happens is you start to realize the areas where you don't feel that way. And I think that, certainly for Ron, and I know I'm sure he shared about this, but for a lot of people, it's like, well, I don't want to be in environments where I can't be myself. I don't want to live a life that, the greatest regret across the board when they've done these studies of people on their deathbed, terminally ill, folks that are at the end of their life, like imminently at the end of their life. The greatest regret consistently is, I wish I had lived my life the way I wanted to. I wish I hadn't worried about what others would think. Across the board, it is like always the number one. And so how amazing would that be if you could discover that decades and decades before you get to that point and get to live the rest of your life in a way that you wanted to, without worrying about what people thought, without living the life that you think others wanted you to live. It's just like, how do you imagine taking back all of those decades and living them the way you wanted to live them? It's like, imagine not having that regret. It is the number one regret we have. And I think that, this is all stuff that we see happen for people, but we don't tell people what they're going to get out, because some people might just get in and be like, I had a hangover. I know this is great for hangovers. It's the reality of it, right? There's science side to it. There's a healing side to it.
So that's what I wanted to ask. You've been doing this for so long. And again, I want you to talk about those group Sunrise Socials and all that stuff. You're getting a lot of first timers.
A ton.
And is this that tipping point? Hashtag Malcolm Gladwell. Have you read his book?
I sure have.
Of course you have.
Yeah. Familiar.
This could very well be that tipping point for many people to start that shift of carefree judgment and, finally finding themselves.
Mm-hmm.
You agree?
I certainly think it's an opportunity. I think that this is an opportunity for people to feel a way that is different than they've felt before. Have a moment where they are void of ego, or they're, psychedelics do this wonderfully. We know this. You have that disassociative feeling or that ego death, and you're very present in your body and there's no chatter. You could feel, the big thing that a lot of people have is I think we are a very fear-based society, and we live our lives in fear. A lot of our lives in fear, be it fear of judgment, be it fear of life, be it fear of getting hurt, rejected, failure. And I think this is one of those opportunities where someone can feel fear and then push through that fear and come out on the other side and be like, oh, I can. And it's a very simple, I don't want to say it's dumbed down, but it's as simple as being like, cold water is scary because it's cold. It's like, but you're making it scary, right? And as the more things that we can step into that we have created as fear-based areas and rewrite that narrative, the healthier we're going to be as a population. And so I think this is, like I said, I think it's an opportunity where people can rewrite the narrative on some of their fear, some of their confidence, some of the way that they go about their life. And it can also not be that, but it certainly is a door that they can walk through if they like. Because for a lot of people, when we first started a few years ago, it was exactly that. Are you guys crazy? What are you doing? You'll catch hypothermia. You're going to get sick. Why would anyone ever do that? And then someone tries it. They're like, whoa, what was that? I feel amazing. Why do I feel amazing? Cool. Why do I feel so engaged? And then, there's a whole bunch of education behind it that you can back it up with. But the experience itself, everyone's going to get something different. But there is a consistent theme, which is I'm not the person. I'm a different person on this side of getting out of the tub than I was getting into the tub. Even if just for the simple fact I didn't want to, I felt uncomfortable or I felt scared about it. And then I pushed through that anyway. And then that is just like honing that discipline bone, honing that ability to face discomfort, face struggle. There's a Buddhist monk that I love to quote, and he's got a book called No Mud, No Lotus. And it's basically, the premise of it is, and I'm going to butcher his name, it's Thich Nhat Hanh. But forgive me for
we'll put the proper spelling down there.
For the spelling is I can't properly remember the spelling either, but he's like the foremost Buddhist monk, and he compiled all of his teachings into like a very digestible, easy to read book. It's like 80 pages long. Each chapter is like 2 pages. It's wonderful for someone that likes to just like blast through a quick aha moment. Anyway, his whole premise is that a life well lived is a life well struggled. And I think that, for anyone that thinks life is going to be always amazing, or they're always trying to make life amazing, or you're going to get to a certain point, you're going to make a certain amount of money, you're going to get a house, you're going to get a family, all these things. And then, or there's like a moment at which you're going to get to a place where it's like, okay, great. I'm just going to turn off all that stress, all that struggle. You're never getting there. It's never going to end. And so to live a good life is to live a life where you have developed the tools to combat that stress, to combat that feeling of struggle, and to be able to live in that chaos and find peace within that chaos day to day. And I think this cold plunging, cold exposure, all these somatic wellness tools that we're now sort of awakening is an opportunity to practice that. And so this is an opportunity to develop your ability to struggle well in life and therefore live well in life.
Segue.
Yeah.
Talking about those experiences and really providing an opportunity for a lot of newbies, right? To where you're at now, what's going on with your current operations and what are you doing? Because I know you're doing A ton.
Yeah.
And even I don't even know everything that you're doing.
Even I don't even know everything that I'm doing. It feels like we're doing something new every day. But yeah, so I mean, it's been as you can imagine, with sort of bringing this product to a blue ocean, right? Like there wasn't anyone really doing cold exposure en masse.
I've got that book actually
on blue ocean strategy. Yeah, it's a great one. It's a great one. Yeah. But this really is, and still with all of the information and all of the people out there doing it, it still is a blue ocean. And, you know, something that we're doing, which is unique. You see tons of companies out there doing bathhouses and sauna and cold plunge spots. You see tons of companies doing cold tubs themselves. But very few companies are actually doing the experiences, right? Like the events and the experiences around the cold. And that's something that, to go back to like what people will get out of it, we're ruthless with our approach as a company, that we're not going to tell you what you're going to get. We're not going to tell you what's going to happen or what you're going to get from this. We're going to arm you with the education, the science of why we're doing this, what's important, why you should do this for your body, for your mind, for your social health, your mental health, your physical health. Yeah. And then we're going to give you the experience, that peak experience, that opportunity to practice this. And then we're going to empower you and give you the tools to take this into your life. And what you get out of it, whether it's a profound epiphany, whether it's a simple like, oh, this was good for me. My lower back feels better right now. I like that. You know, there's the spectrum. There's people that that cry and weep in the tub, realizing that they can, or they're processing some sort of trauma. It's actually very common, and it's very common, and has become sort of like a whole arm of cold exposure, is teaching facilitators how to be trauma informed, because it does not only bring up a lot of trauma, but help work through and process a lot of trauma.
Let's brew on that just for a little bit more. So are you telling me that someone can experience, you know, tears of joy or something like that, a profound experience when they're in the cold water?
Absolutely. And it happens all the time. Even in large groups where you think someone might not want to share that side of them or be that vulnerable. Sometimes they just don't have the choice. Like that comes up and that comes out.
Just a big release.
Yeah. People can have a traumatic release. People can also get triggered. People can also have a bad experience. Like there's the whole realm of possibilities that you can have. And that's why, you know, we're so tight on how our facilitators are trained, the intensity with which we license and certify people, and the container that we create in our events and our experiences, because to us, it's like very important that you're the container and not dictating what that person's experience is going to be. We know that you're going to get something out of it, and we're not going to tell you what it's going to be. That's for you to figure out and for you to lean into or not. But we're going to create a safe, informed container where you can explore that. And that's how we started. That's how it started on the beach back in the day, 3 years ago, where it was us every morning. I was actually talking with my partner about this 2 mornings ago, where for 2.5 years, every morning we woke up at 5 a.m., brought a bundle of firewood, brought a speaker, and went, and a swimsuit, and went down to the shore in winter.
You did this every day?
Every single day.
A bundle of wood.
Bundle of wood. Bundle of wood, a torch, a big speaker, and a swimsuit, and some instant coffee that we would cook over the fire. And we would do what is called break the ice classes, which is where we would educate people for 5 to 10 minutes about why this is good for them, what's important about it. We would do some breath work for about 5 to 10 minutes to prime the nervous system before getting into the water. Then we would do a dip between 2 and 4 minutes. And then we would come out and we'd stand around the fire and have coffee or tea and talk about the experience. And then everyone would go on their way to work. And you'd have lived this whole experience, this whole day on the beach in the winter in Toronto.
Before the sun even rose.
As the sun rose. It was timed so that you were actually in the water as the sun was rising. And people would have these incredibly empowering experiences and these sort of moments where it's like, imagine sitting at a desk or going back to your home at your home desk now, right? Because part of this is during the pandemic. And sitting at your desk and it's like 9 a.m. and you're like, where was I? What did I just do? And why do I feel this way? I was just on the beach in the middle of winter around a fire in the water, connecting with strangers and like sharing something about myself. It was just like this really cool moment for a lot of people. And so we were doing this every single morning for a couple of years.
Kind of like whoever wanted to show up showed up, or was this an exclusive bunch of friends? Or
initially it was just reaching out to friends, and then friends would ask if they could bring friends, and then those friends would ask, very similar to the meal company when I think about it, where this just caught fire. And again, it was people being like, wow, that sounds scary, or wow, that friend had that incredible experience. I want to lean into that, or I want to know more, or I'd like to try it. Or a lot of times it was someone going through it and then being like, I need to share this with someone, or I need to share this with everyone. And it was just a snowball, like, interesting analogy, but the snowball effect, where everyone started to come out more regularly. And then we started to make it a little bit more official. And there was that moment, you had the photo up earlier with Ron and I in the ice holes. And this is still in our early days of discovering what is our product. What are we doing? Is this just a community? Are we just passionate about the cold water and what it's doing for us and our health? Or is this something that we're going to be making into a business? Because there's clearly a demand here. People are asking, like, when can we do the next class? This is obviously a use of our time, and we need to value our time and the resources that we're putting towards this. And so we straddled that line of, do we make a community? Do we keep it a community and just build a community, or do we build a business? And that goes back to, do I feel good about what I'm selling, and do I believe in what I'm selling? And so those two things were I was in for the business, and Lisa, my business partner and romantic partner, was in for the business, and Zach was in for the business. But Ron was like, I really want to keep this special to me. I want to keep this as my passion and my practice. So I will support. I will always be a founder, but I'm going to not make this a business. I would like to keep it separate. And that he's always been an incredible support to us, and has been a huge role in the business from the sidelines as a huge cheerleader and a wonderful support for us. But all that to say is, Ron and I were up at our retreat center at the Trace, which is now where we run cold camps, and we'll jump into that in a sec. But it was lockdown. It was still in the very early days of cold exposure, and Queen's Gambit was very topical at that time. As you know, Queen's Gambit's like this show. I never saw it, but it's a show on Netflix that focuses around chess. Yeah, you might. It was like very topical for a short blip.
Anything TV, I'm just completely clueless. So
I feel you on that. So, but here we are. So Ron was like, what can we do that's going to be a little bit more engaging than just jumping in a hole, for the 100th time or whatever it might be. And I was like, well, certainly if you're looking about getting some sort of attention online, chess is topical. And the other interesting part of this is that chess requires strategic thinking, right? Like it requires a certain type of cognitive ability to strategize and think ahead like that, which when we know that when you get in cold water, like your frontal lobe, the activity reduces by like 80%. So you're fighting the physical reaction in your body by trying to think in a strategic way.
Going more into an animal reactive state.
Correct. And you're jumping into the sympathetic nervous system as opposed to the parasympathetic nervous system. So you're really more focused on like alert, survival, attentiveness, all that. But you're not thinking in like a relaxed, strategic brain necessarily. So I was like, this is great, because this is going to really push our limits of, can we actually focus and try and strategize on chess? Right. So we cut the holes, and lucky enough, there was, of course, a contractor nearby that was like, yeah, I'll take a photo and a video of you guys. And we played a 6-minute chess game. we got out, and Ron did the Ron thing, which was, put it up on Instagram and tag certain news reels and things like that. And like overnight, this went around the world. Huffington Post, MSNBC, CBS, CNN, CTV, CBC, Breakfast Television, CP24, Reuters, the International Chess Federation got in touch. Like, it just blew up. Yeah. Two guys in Canada playing a game of chess in the ice. Blah. We had all of this attention all of a sudden, and I realized this was kind of that moment. And at this point, we weren't called Unbounded. We didn't.
Well, hold on. What type of attention? Good, positive, any bad?
Positive. I mean, there were a couple people. Again, we were up at our cottage resort that we lease. We were staying at long term. We now lease as a business, but there were a couple of people that are like, "What are two Torontonians doing outside their district during COVID?" And it was like, we live here. Come on. Yeah. So it was actually mostly just people being like, "Wow, you crazy Canadians, how did you do that?" It's very newsworthy and clickbaity, and it's great. It was great for press, but it was an opportunity because at that time we didn't have a company name, we didn't have a company website, we didn't have an Instagram, we didn't have any of these things. Didn't have a logo. We were actually called Kraken Cold Plunge. That was our community name at that time on our WhatsApp group. Again, because we had brought a couple bottles, little shot bottles of Kraken rum.
Oh, the rum. Yeah, sure.
Again, back in the day, how it used to be done. Yes. We don't pair alcohol at all with any of our experiences.
Pretty much everyone in the group's sober anyway.
Exactly. Yeah. So, but it was just called Kraken Cold Plunge. And so, I sat down with Ron, Lisa, and Zach, and I was like, listen, I do feel good about putting this attention on a business, on something that is outside of ourselves. I don't care to have it be like, here's these two guys and get interviews about us playing chess in the ice and have a 15 minutes of attention that's not going to do anything for anyone. I'd rather bring this attention and put it on an entity, something that we can build a platform around. Outside of the community, I think this is an opportunity to sort of jumpstart a business. And they all agreed. And so overnight, we created the logo, the company name, the website, the Instagram page with like a full grid of Instagram photos. And so the next day when we actually did all these interviews for all these news outlets,
wow.
It was like, well, yes, this is our business. This is our company, Unbounded, and this is our website, and here's our thing. And so we had all of these links and all of this background. It was a boiler room, man. 12 hours. Yeah. 12 hours of just hammering it out in a single room with the other three of them to come up with all of essentially these business assets that we didn't have at that time. Yeah. And that was sort of the the unveiling of Unbounded. And from there, we opened up doing morning classes, the Break the Ice classes officially, and people could go online like you would on ClassPass or something like that and book a Break the Ice class, which was you were going down to do a jump in the lake and do some breath work and sit by the fire and have this morning. And so that first season, we just ran these classes. Basically, really, it was like community education more than anything. And then at that time, we were still living up at the Trace. And the interesting thing is that we were living in these chalets, cutting holes in the ice, sitting in the sauna, using red lights, doing breath work, connecting over meals. The whole business that we promote and the whole lifestyle we promote was the lifestyle we were living when we were dreaming up this business. It was really just taking what we were doing and be like, this feels like how people can get better. This is how we feel we're getting better, and we want to share this. And so that next winter, we rented out that whole property, and we're like, we're going to run Cold Camp. And so we're going to bring people up here, have them stay in chalets, and run weekend wellness programs where someone comes up here, they're going to connect with other people, they're going to get vulnerable, they're going to jump in the ice hole, they're going to go get in the sauna, and there's going to be a whole, it's like staying at a spa in your own chalet, connecting with strangers, and doing programming based around your wellness.
So I'm going to interrupt you because it's kind of funny, and you've heard this before, and we both chuckle at this. You have sort of coined yourself as the dude that creates experiences for others, and your friends picked you because Nick is going to create an experience. And what's the difference between someone just deciding to do it on their own and go in the cold lake, right? It's people
Mhm.
say that and they say, well, why would I spend money going to
Sure.
a cold lake? It's so common. So why would someone decide to do this and do this experience?
Yeah. And it's like, the thing is, they can, and it's a fair question. And we did get it a lot. But the reality is, it's the experience around it. It's the education around it. It's the manner in which we create that experience to be so different than any other that you'll get. The safety around it as well. It's like, a good friend of mine is like, he gives big talks and he gets paid a lot of money for these talks, and people are like, wow, you make this much money in 1 hour. Isn't that crazy? He's like, well, you're not paying me for that hour. You're paying me for the decades of practice that I put in to being able to talk for that hour. Right. And I think this is the same thing. Like, you're not just paying us for you to jump in cold water. You're paying us for the experience of what you're going to get out of this. You're paying for the container of safety. You're paying for that experience being so different than any other one you're going to get doing it anywhere else, and knowing that you're safe and you're with experts. And so, aside from being able to stay in a chalet on a resort and take part in all these things, like you would go pay to stay in a Scandinav spa or something like that. So there is real, there's intangible and tangible value to what we offer. But I think why us? I think it's because we have created so many experiences, and we know the difference between an unbound experience and not an unbound experience. And we hear the feedback from people when they're like, oh, I did this thing, but it wasn't an unbound. It didn't feel like an unbounded experience. And so that has become an amazing vertical, and one of our biggest verticals in our business is creating these wellness weekends up at Cold Camp, which is like, where else would you live in one of the coldest places in the world and be like, you know what, for a vacation, what am I going to do? I'm going to go get colder and go like work on myself. But it's taken off and it's been super successful. And then we thought, well, okay, how do we do this in the summer? We can't just be a seasonal business. There's 6 months of the year where there's not ice and not water, and there's still all the benefits of this that people need. So what's the product that we can create for that? And I was walking along the Toronto shorefront. This was 2 summers ago. And I was just looking at, we were at Trillium Park, and I was just like, it'd be cool is if you almost had like a wellness festival where you had like a stage and someone was leading people through some breath work or some meditation, and then everyone would jump, and there'd be like a little sauna village and a whole section of cold tubs, and you would cycle between cold and hot. And wouldn't it be cool if you had like a bonfire where you could sit there and like have a coffee or a tea and then listen to a musician playing by the fire, and everyone was connecting and doing like human connection exercises? Wouldn't that feel like a cool morning? And then
this is you just walking by a park.
This is just walking by Trillium Park, thinking about it. And I was like, you know what? Why don't we just see if they'd be open to it? And so I got in touch with the park at Ontario Place, and I was like, this is an event that I'd like to do. And kudos to them. They're like, that sounds different. Go on. And I was like, well, would I be able to bring a sauna, bring a cold plunge, not actually like run them, but just shoot some photos and get some people to like do a proof of concept, and then see if we can market that and if people would go for it.
I'm going to applaud you on that. I think that's a brilliant idea. Just
Thanks.
To plant the seed.
Yeah.
Right. See if they were open and create some interest, which you did.
Yeah. And our first event, we got 165 people out. Our next event, we got 275. The next event, we got 350. And then we've run 6 events this year that have all been between 450, 500 people. And of those people, it's about 90% net new. So we are shifting a whole ton of people in the downtown Toronto.
Do you have that on your Instagram?
Not on mine specifically.
Well, there's one kind of, right?
Kind of, yeah. That's during one of our human connection exercises. We do a variety of these, and to me, these are actually like much more difficult than the cold water, because we get people to stand, a meter away from someone and just silently look in their eyes for 2 minutes. Which, if you've ever done this, it's very hard. It's very uncomfortable. And we spend so many of our days just looking at our phones, looking down, catching someone's eye, looking away. That's just one of the exercises we do. Another one's a rosebud thorn, where you will share with someone something that was great in your day, something that is growing for you, or is being created, and something that's not so great in your day. And we just do these things to instill in people the opportunity to connect with others authentically, the opportunity to connect with yourself authentically. And the reason we incorporate that into these events is that when you've done all the other elements leading up to that, so you've sweated, you've gotten cold, you've moved, you've opened up, you've meditated, you're sat by fire and listened, you're in a much more primed position to really connect with somebody. It's like we were saying in the sauna and the cold plunge. Like, you're in a place where you're ready to actually engage with somebody in a meaningful way. And then you walk back into Toronto with this newfound connection. You're like, I feel different. I'm going to approach people differently. And wouldn't that be great if, every one of these events, we create a certain feeling in 500 people, and those 500 people go and engage differently with all the people they're going to engage with in the day. And then how does that trickle out? And how does that trickle out? And how does that trickle out? And all of a sudden, you're creating change by improving the quality of life in those people that attend your event. And then they're going to go and interact with others and improve their quality of life, or share that with them.
Creating ripples.
Ripples make waves. That's one of our sayings. And so we've got these amazing products that, you're absolutely right. Someone a long time ago would be like, what do you mean I'm going to pay you to jump in the lake? And it's like, you are, and you're going to end up loving it, and we're going to feel great doing it. And so we have these amazing retreats and wellness weekends up at Cold Camp. And then we have these really cool wellness festival mornings in Toronto. And sort of that's the in real life opportunities that we have as a brand. And then something we've gotten really passionate about in the last little while, and, the future of where I think we're going is more of a regulatory body or an advisory body on, as I mentioned, we certify and license and insure instructors. As this industry grows, as it blossoms out, there's going to be a lot of people doing things the wrong way. As we know, there's lots in the news now about instances happening with other brands, things being done improperly and fatalities happening. And so we're really passionate about the safety of the experience. And so our goal is to basically become the governing body that helps regulate, insure, certify. It's certainly less glamorous than the in real life experiences, which we're always going to keep. But we're really passionate about becoming sort of like an entity that helps keep this industry safe.
And you can totally take ownership, knowing and saying that, like, you are the authority because you've been doing it for so long. And so, that's pretty cool. I didn't know that you're, I guess, like, protecting others and making sure other business models are doing it correctly. Yeah.
And I think just more setting standards. I think there aren't any standards. And one of the things, that we came up across was, while working with public health and bylaw, that public health doesn't have a set of regulations for cold tubs, for example. So they just classify you as a pool, class B pool, class C pool, which is so outdated because they're asking you to have like a reaching pole for someone that's going to be, in a foot and a half of water right beside you, but they don't have a box to put you in. So they end up basically shuttling you into a category that doesn't make sense. We want to help rewrite that narrative. We want to create, what are the regulations around cold tubs? How is it done safely? What is a safe vessel? Okay, if there is a facilitator, like we have personal training insurance and personal training certifications, yoga insurance, yoga facilitations and certifications. So there's going to need to be a governing body that helps create these, that sets a group of standards. And that's where we're starting to lean into right now.
So then on that note, before we leave, obviously I'm going to put Unbounded and Cold Camp's information in the caption, and then I'll put it in the video. This coming season, what can people do to experience the Unbounded lifestyle? What are their options?
Well, their options are, Cold Camp is by far and away the the best option, in my opinion. It's just such a unique experience that you really can't get anywhere else. As I said, it's a weekend away where you're practicing cold. There's a very primal feeling, unlike any other, where you walk down to the lake at sunrise and you can cut your own hole in the ice and jump in, and then go into a sauna in the middle of the woods. And there's just a magic to it that I'm a big fan of cold tubs, but nothing is ever going to touch the experience of getting into a lake or getting into a frozen lake, and the feeling you have of living in that moment. So I think that if there's an opportunity for someone to experience an unbounded experience, it's coming up to Cold Camp. We're working with regulators right now in bylaw to make sure that we can do shore classes this season. But it's a tough process. It requires a lot of permits and planning ahead. So the shore classes aren't available as of yet. We're working on it. But Cold Camp is certainly well alive and thriving, and a pretty unique experience to attend.
I can attest to that, as you know, because I've been many times now, just completely fell in love with it. Mm-hmm. And then I brought some of the Gut Gang community.
That's right.
And so we'll be doing that again for sure. And then I probably my next interview, I don't have a picture with my mom, but she did. She came to Cold Camp.
That's right.
Right? She loved it so much that I needed to come back home. And she stayed for another night completely all by herself, and it was just her and Ron. And she was chopping wood with Ron.
Of course, yeah.
Yeah, so it truly is an amazing experience. So thank you so much for creating it, because I've been able to benefit from it. Others have been able to benefit from it, from me bringing them. And then, we're just bringing more and more people to this community. So thank you for creating it.
It's, I appreciate that. And I think, again, I think the community just creates itself, but I think that, I'll take the praise on creating the container.
So if you want to leave it with one message for the viewership and the audience, what would that be?
It's embrace discomfort. As played out as that phrase is, it really is. I think there's so much value in that. I think that our life is so much better lived when we embrace discomfort, when we have the tools at hand to live a life in discomfort. And I think that this is, be it cold water, be it having a tough conversation, be it finally sending that email that you've been sitting on and you don't want to send, whatever it is, the thing, the obstacle is the way. And so I would say whatever it is, the thing that is a little bit uncomfortable for you, just lean into it.
I'm going to leave it at that. Whatever's uncomfortable, lean into it.
Mm-hmm.
Beauty. Thanks, Nick.
Appreciate it. Thanks, Brendan.
Okay, that wraps up this episode of the Gut Gang podcast. Thanks so much for being part of the Gut Gang community. And don't forget, if you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe, rate, and even leave a comment. Your feedback fuels our growth. And also, here's something special. If you want more exclusive content, be sure to become part of the private Gut Gang members-only community, where you get to see behind-the-scenes bonus segments in my cold plunge and the sauna with each of the podcast guests. That's right. Part of the podcast series is having the guests hang out with me for the whole day at my place, biohacking, taking cold plunges, going in the sauna, even a coffee tasting where we hook up all the mics and the cameras and we shoot the entire experience. You definitely don't want to miss out on this action. So I'll see you over there. Gut Whisperer out.